Despite the public outrage and protest by the Canadian public, Bill C-51, or the Anti-Terrorism Act, was pushed through the House of Commons at a vote of 183 to 96. This is largely due to the Conservative majority and the support from the Liberal Party. The only parties voting against it were the NDP and the Green Party. The highly controversial legislation grants the Canadian Security Intelligence Service greater power to prevent terrorist attacks. It grants more than the power to collect information. Information may be shared between agencies with greater ease. It increases the power of the no-fly list. It also makes it easier for the RCMP to obtain a peace bond to restrict the movements of suspects and extend the amount of time they can be kept in preventative detention. The bill has been denounced by the Federal Privacy Commissioner, the Canadian Bar Association, First Nations groups, environmental organizations, and civil libertarians. It also grants certain powers for disruption services, meaning they can cancel bank transactions covertly, take down websites, even cancel people's travel plans, all because they suspect, and even without any serious evidence, that you are a terrorist. In other words, this is a great deal of legislation that can have you locked up, have your freedoms taken away, with virtually no evidence against you whatsoever. The preventative detention, meaning they can lock you up because they think that you're going to do something. Do they have to demonstrate that you would? They just have to say they think you're going to do something. They don't even have to provide any serious evidence for that. And they can just throw you in prison and take away your civil rights. A constitutional lawyer who has opposed Prime Minister Stephen Harper in the past, Rocco Galati, described the bill as a modern-day Gestapo. No exaggeration. That's what it creates. It chills, censors, and criminalizes free speech, free association, and constitutional rights of assembly. The real purpose of this bill is actually quite clear. It's intended to intimidate and criminalize opposition within the Canadian public. Most obviously being used against environmentalists and First Nations people for the ongoing Alberta tar sands situation, in which many of the livelihoods and communities are being destroyed by oil companies. We should really have no illusion. This entire bill was designed to silence any opposition to the bourgeois rule, to what it is that the bourgeoisie want. And this should be frankly clear to anyone. I think there's something very telling about this. We as Canadians have shut off our mouths for a very long time, saying that we're not like America, we're not like them. We have celebrated our junior partnership in imperialism. We've had a secondary role, a support role in it. And that one of the things that we've always been able to do is to hold our heads high, to say that, we're not like the Americans. We're like peacekeepers, we're not police. When in fact, all we really are is that junior partner in imperialism. And one of the things that a lot of Canadians have always been able to say to each other is that, well, we're not like the Americans. We don't have a Patriot Act, or we don't have, scary draconian security measures. This is a perfect example. This is the Canadian equivalent to the USA Patriot Act. This is the most fascist piece of legislation that has ever been put through Parliament outside of an actual wartime. I think that if the government is really going to go after us like this, we should take all of the people who supported these measures, that includes members of the public, and have them be spied on by the government first. Let's take all those people who are in support of this, have them put into a database, detained, and all of those things done to them. Because I think that would be only fair. After that, we should take everybody who voted conservative and put them in the same situation. Let's have the government come down on them. Let's have them carry out these draconian security measures against them. After all, they certainly felt that it was okay to vote conservative, knowing what conservatives are. And in many cases, we're probably looking for something like this. I think it's only fair. They were the ones that put us in this situation. Possibly the most important thing to keep in mind here is that terrorism is virtually no threat to Canadians whatsoever. And in fact, in the past decade, only 2 Canadians have actually died from terrorist attacks on Canadian soil. The threat is virtually non-existent. In fact, you can find more people who have choked to death on Timbits in the last 10 years than people who have been killed by terrorism. You could find more people killed in a year by moose than there are people who have been killed by terrorism. And in fact, you could show more people per year being killed while playing hockey, suffering injuries causing death, than there have been of Canadians dying of terrorism. In fact, this whole terrorism scare is so massively overblown, it's absolutely ridiculous. In instances like this, a lot of people like to point to the writings of George Orwell in 1984. And that this whole huge, scary, Soviet Union straw man argument that he makes, saying how they're going to intentionally dumb people down. There's going to be spying. There's going to be all sorts of really scary, fascist-y stuff. Isn't it rather appropriate that all of this has actually happened under capitalism and not socialism? Isn't it so tremendously fulfilling to notice that all of these things that were used to scare the public away from socialism have actually taken place in capitalism? All of this to defend the privilege and power of the ruling class, to maintain the stability of the system. I think that's entirely appropriate, and it may be even ironic, but I think it makes a very telling point. The right wing have done this. Conservatives have done this. Those who are the most anti-communist are the ones who are actually responsible for fascist-style police spying and all sorts of legal measures. I think that's very, very telling of the anti-communist position, and it is nothing but entirely appropriate that all the inhumanities that we were warned about actually occur under the right wing. If you like this video and you'd like to see more of them, then head over to my Patreon page and show your support. Or you can go to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available. Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and share on various social media.